talk about that. You called that factoring.
Well, that's one form. There's asset-based lending and factoring.
Okay.
Would be the two common things
Okay.
there. And the material difference between them, simple level, is that asset-based lending is a lien arrangement where they file a lien against your property, in this case the receivables, possibly the inventory. A factoring company is generally only interested in the receivables, and they don't place so much a lien on them as they actually take legal ownership.
Oh my golly, okay.
Okay, and then you in effect buy it out when the thing's
Okay.
collected. But it can, what I'll do sometimes with the client is, if I think they have the need that way and I want to find out if they might be interested, I might say to them in a very simple way, well, if you could have, say, 75% of your accounts receivable by Friday of next week, would you give your clients a 5% discount to do that? And
Whoa.
if the answer comes back of, yeah, I do that in a heartbeat, then they won't think factoring is too expensive.
Gotcha. I was going to say. So factoring is factoring is it a certain percentage over prime rate?
No.
How would that work?
Well, each one of them does their own different little quirk, and they offer different things to different clients.
Okay.
It's not flat out the same.
Okay.
But typically, they will charge you a base amount, maybe 1.5 for the first month.
I see.
Okay.
I see.
And then, then they'll do it at 15-day increments thereafter. But it's not like an interest rate. If it clears in 28 days, you're still paying for the whole month.
Yes.
And if you go to the next 15-day increment and you go 5 days into it, you're paying for all 15.
Yes.
So there's upside, downsides, and it's the kind of thing like so many others. Look carefully, study the overall picture, look at what you're doing, what your alternatives are, and then pick what works best for you. And sometimes that is a good answer, and particularly for a high growth rate company.
Now that's interesting, but the most significant statement you made was ask the business owner if they could get their receivables in the next 30 days, 10 days,
yeah.
Would they pay a 5%? Would they discount it by 5%? And that's a heck of a good question.
Well, it's what I do as a simplifier. If the client's response is no way, well then factoring is not going to be an answer.
That's not going to be an answer.
And it depends on, that's before I even know them well enough. If you can get into understanding what their margins are and what they have to work with, then you can make a better judgment. But one of the key areas is when you have a company that's rapidly growing. We joked earlier how banks loan you money this year based on how you did last year for what you did next year.
Yeah.
If you're in a high growth mode, you can't reset your line of credit fast enough and high enough at a normal bank operating speed to accommodate that growth. The bank's not comfortable. It's a risk factor. Whereas a factoring company, if they buy in on who your accounts receivable are, they'll go with it without capping it. And in between those is where you tend to have the asset-based lender groups who specialize sometimes by industry, sometimes by size, and they come in kind of intermediate. They're more nimble and more aggressive than the bank, and generally a little bit more favorably priced than